So, for example, when I was in Nairobi, one of the part of the culture that came up was the high price of dowry. It came up right away.
Yeah.
These young men were talking about how they cannot afford to get married. I didn't talk much about that, right? Like, I didn't openly say we need to look into our high price dowry, but that came up.
Hello guys, welcome to All21 Media, and of course I'm your host Ian. Thank you very much for your support. We really appreciate what you're doing. Continue subscribing and share our channels. Also comment so that we know what you want, and actually we'll be very happy. Our guest is actually Miss Nyajuok Tongyik, the author of I Am My Mother's Wildest Dream. Thank you very much. We were with her some days. So she went for a tour. She went to Egypt, she went to South Sudan, she went to Uganda, and yeah, she went to Kakuma. Now she's here with us, and she will be going back to US. So let us hear from her what it means, and yeah, being that holder, and yeah, she will share with us many things. Thank you. Let's go meet Nyajuok.
Thank you for having me.
So how was the tour? Let us begin from there.
It was highly documented on social media. So
and actually following you through all through in the media.
It's went very well. We've been on tour for over 2 months. As you said, we went from Nairobi, we went to Kampala, we went to South Sudan, which was amazing. From South Sudan we went to Cairo. Yes, and then back to South Sudan we went to Ethiopia, and then from Ethiopia Kakuma refugees camp. So it's I don't have the word to describe it.
What was your feeling yourself? What was your feeling?
I was just so amazed by how many people shared their stories with me.
Yeah.
So I felt comfortable. I was really in my zone. I was sharing my story. It can't be harder than that. It's my own story. So yeah.
So your book launch is one of the biggest things as South Sudanese that we can be proud of. Yeah. So you have came along with people sharing their lives with you at the way that you share with them. So what are some of the reviews from the people that you really came across?
Well, one thing I learned right away was this book was way bigger than Nyajuok. You know, it was about the whole South Sudan, the people of South Sudan, and it got to the point now where it's Africa in general.
So have you ever come across anyone who had negative comments about the book?
Oh yeah, yes, and I highly welcome them. Yeah, I highly welcome them. I understand nobody can always be loved by 100% of everybody, you know. So of course, initially I thought the people that were negative were hidden. They weren't coming out and telling me about how they feel, but throughout the tour, they start being vocal too. So they write about it. They send me messages.
Okay, what's the intention? Is it like they're criticizing, or they are making a correction of what should have been done?
No, I think they most of these people have not read the book. Okay, they have an assumption that I'm from the West, I'm from America, and they already assume that I'm coming to change the culture, and I hate the culture, and I'm imposing Western culture in South Sudan. So I can tell right away that they have not read the book, but regardless, they have an opinion that they were not hiding.
Okay, that's good. So in short, we can say that the book is changing, right?
Yeah.
Can you read to that point?
Yeah, I'll tell you a few stories. You know, when I read the book, I just want to share my story. My initial plan for writing the book was to allow people to talk about their trauma. I want to share my own trauma, my own path, so that people can also share their own. Well, when people start reading it, not only they relate to my trauma, but they also identify some cultural norms and practices that they feel need to be looked at and maybe even change. And as I went through each country and talked to South Sudanese, these part of the cultures that people were they feel like was either hinder to them or hinders to the progress of the whole society, it was coming up, right? So, for example, when I was in Nairobi, one of part of the culture that came up was the high price of dowry. It came up right away. Yeah. These young men were talking about how they cannot afford to get married. I didn't talk much about that, right? Like, I didn't openly say we need to look into our high price dowry, but that came up. So I went to Kampala, and the next thing that came up in Kampala was the widow inheritance. So I had young men that came to me and said they ran away from South Sudan because their family were forcing them to take in their father's wives. Yeah, and how they rather be in school and they don't want to do that, and they're still young and they have girlfriends. So that conversation took place about widow inheritance. Yeah. So I went to Juba, and I was carrying all these things, right? So I went to Juba, and it was about child education, and it was about the forced marriages, the early child marriages. So now we have like 4 things that we were talking about. So the campaign took over, and it became about education in general, the lack of education with our youth, especially our young women. And it has to do with the early child marriages, and that we need to look into age, and I found out we have a law too. We actually do have a law that against child marriage, but it's not being reinforced because the very people that could reinforce it are the people that are violating it. You see the problem? So these were stories that I heard, and now, as you know, on social media and throughout South Sudan, everybody's reading I Am My Mother's Wildest Dream in South Sudan, but it now has a purpose. It now has a foundation that we are campaigning, and it has to do with early child marriages, it has to do with forced marriages, it has to do with high price of dowry, widow inheritance. All of these things now came out of the tour. And I initially didn't expect this to be the turnout.
People have been actually trying to follow up with what you wrote. And it's really a great thing to discuss. I want us to be open before we go deep, but I want you to be open to us and share your experience with us about this early child marriage and the forced marriage. I know you're a victim. Yes.
Chapter 3 in my book, I Am My Mother's Wildest Dream, was about my arranged marriage. As from our previous interview, I talked about how I was forced into arranged marriage when I was 14, and it actually went back to earlier than that. I don't remember, maybe as early as 10 years old, because I remember in Dima refugees camp there was 2 marriages that happened with me. Of course, they didn't progress to like marriage part, but there was already dowry or down payment taken. You know how they put some money down and wait until the girl get older? So I had few of those things happen in Dima refugees camp, but I'm grateful my dad pulled me out of it and said, I'm taking my daughter to America. But we got in America, and then I found myself in an arranged marriage when I was 14, and that really it was traumatic. It was traumatic for me, and that became a focal point for me writing this book. So that was the most story in my heart that I really wanted to share, because I know it was still happening. And it wasn't just forced marriage or early child marriage, but there was a lot of other things. As a woman, there was a lot of rapes in our communities. Kids are being raped, girls being raped and not being reported because of community shame. And there's this practice in South Sudan where a woman experience is hidden and it's left in the house and it's not supposed to come outside the home. So a lot of women are dealing with trauma that has not been expressed, and they don't know how to share it. So I share my story to give them space to share their own story, and this has been one of my best discoveries during the story, is that people are actually ready to talk. They just need somebody to start sharing their story, and they are starting to talk. And I'm just so excited about, because is how we're going to heal as a society, as individual, is knowing that we own our stories and we should be allowed to share it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the intentions of maybe a parent to let their child to an early marriage? What is the intention behind it? What is their...
It's way bigger than this book. Yeah? It's poverty. Yeah. One of the biggest reasons why our children are being forced into early child marriage is poverty. If you find family that is educated, has money, you don't see them force their daughters into early marriages. Families that have young children go into early marriages is because it's the only mean for them to get that dowry and survive through it. So our one way to get out of that is through education. It's kind of look like it's almost a cycle, you know, because you don't want your children to go to have education so that they can get married and you get food, because these dowries come in and that's why the dowry is so high.
Yeah.
You know, it's the form of income. But this is temporary, you know, it's a one-time transaction.
Yeah.
Whereas if you allow your children, your daughter, to go to school and maybe suffer for a few years, and this girl get a high school diploma, a college diploma, and get a job, it's a benefit that will be there forever. It will last forever.
Yeah.
So we have to think about it and maybe suffer for a short time and put our girls in school.
So we should entrust them.
Yeah.
Empower them to live by themselves and empower themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So what is your take on about the book being incorporated in the current curriculum, South Sudanese or maybe other nations like East Africa?
It's a really good question, and we actually discussed this question a lot during Juba lunch. You know, the book in Juba was sponsored by academic. So it was sponsored by Dr. John Guy's Center for Strategic and Policy Studies. So from the beginning, it was already into the academic part, and it was launched at Juba University. So we had the chancellors of schools coming into the lunch and supporting. So right away, we knew that the book is already into the school system, and the way they're supporting right now, many books has been donated to Juba University. And if you remember, a lot of our officials, our vice presidents, our secretary to the president, or security personnel to secretary, security advisor to the president, has purchased 1,300 books to be donated to schools in South Sudan. Governors are already making laws against child marriage because of the book. So I'm not worried so much about South Sudan. I think it's already in the school system in South Sudan. It's just a matter of time. Our challenge now is the other countries where South Sudanese are. For example, here in Kenya, you know, we have a lot of South Sudanese in Kenya, and I haven't had that chance to talk to the school system or the Ministry of Education here in Kenya. It's something I would love to do, because not only would it benefit the South Sudanese here, but also Kenyan children. Yeah, Kenyan children as a whole. And my goal is for the whole East Africa to start with, to adapt this book, because it will empower their children, it will encourage them, it will give them the mindset that their education is the one powerful tool they have. So we're just getting started. So it's great that South Sudan is already adapting the I Am My Mother's Wildest Dream, but Kenya should be the next country to adapt.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Have you ever come across any other lady, maybe young lady, someone who is interested to be an author like you?
Oh yes, yes. You know, we have a lot of people coming up now. One thing I discovered in Juba is that South Sudan is a living history. You know, our history is actually being written right now as we live. Every single day is a history, and people are starting to write it. Think about it. How many people in the whole world that can say they were there when their country became independent? Not many people, but South Sudanese can say that. Our age group can say that. We were there when South Sudan became independent. Well, we have to know that we own this country. This is our lives, right? So we can't give up. No matter how many obstacles we face, we cannot give up. We have come too far. We have come too far. So my encouragement to them is put your education first. Write your story. Write it. Nobody can disagree with your experience. And if they disagree, you just tell them to go write your own. You know, everybody has a story, and everybody should write their story. There is so much power in sharing our stories with each other. So I highly encourage that. Even if you don't feel like publishing it now, write it down. Write it down. There will be a time where you will have that. Yep. There will be time somebody will inspire you, something will encourage you, and you can publish it then.
For sure. So we understand you met a lot of officials. You met the vice president. You met the Tut Manime. Yeah. You met a lot of big people, a lot of guys who are owning South Sudan right now. A lot of these leaders.
And the Speaker of the House.
The Speaker.
Yes, and it's the female.
And you had a conversation with them. What did you understand from them? Like their understanding on the young people's future and the future of South Sudan?
They support us. They support the young people. You know, I said in the office of, I'm not going to name names, but I said in a lot of our officials' offices, and I had conversation with them, and the support they gave to this book, to me, to the encouragement they gave me, to say, go ahead and share your story. We are behind you, and write more books. It tells me that they support us. South Sudan is the largest population is our youth, yeah? And they know that the focus is on youth for our country to grow economically, to just prosper in general. They have to focus on youth, and that is a huge campaign that they are aware that that's where their work need to be, is youth. And this book should be a really good example to everybody that see how much they support it, that they can also do something and their leaders will support them as well.
So what is your next biggest dream to us? Because what you have done right now is a lifetime achievement. Even if you pass away today, you will still remember this and it pass. So what's your biggest?
That's nice it's nice to hear.
Yeah.
I am very proud of what had happened, how this book turned out. It took a lot of people. It really did. I have a huge team behind me, coordinators everywhere. You know, we went to 6 different countries, 7 events. So it does definitely take a team to do something like this. And I'm just so proud of South Sudan and how they come together and allow me to speak and share my woman, you know, experience. That's first. Like, it just never happened for a Sudanese woman to come out and say, I was violated this way and this is how I felt. So what is the biggest thing? I want more people to write books. I want more people to share their stories. I want to read their stories. Yeah, I want to read their stories. But like, let me tell you, I Am Nyajuok Tongyik is now a foundation that will focus on education. It will focus on women empowerment, girls empowerment. It's a foundation that will give support to our youth for generations to come. So we're just getting started. We're getting started, and from how I see the environment right now, is that there's so much support out there that it's going to be so successful, and it's going to be so much to give back to our people, to our youth. Yeah.
That's great. We really appreciate that. And may God bless you in all those journeys.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Guys, thank you very much for being with us today.
I appreciate it.
When are you traveling?
Tomorrow.
God bless
Yes. Yeah. So. Yeah, I'm going back to my kids. I miss my babies.
That's great. Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you very much, guys, for following up with us. Continue subscribing, sharing our channel. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.